Here is a strange question. Spain controlled the Philippines for more than 3 centuries, while the United States ruled for only a fraction of that time. Spanish influence is still everywhere. Filipinos say words like mesa, kutsara, zapatos, and bintana. Many surnames sound Spanish. Catholic traditions shaped daily life, and towns, streets, and festivals still carry traces of Spain. Yet, if you walk into a school, office, hospital, call center, or family gathering today, the foreign language you are most likely to hear mixed into Filipino conversation is not Spanish. It is English. So, how did a shorter period of American rule leave a stronger spoken language behind than more than 300 years of Spanish rule? The answer is not simply about who stayed longer. It is about who built the system that made a language useful to ordinary people. First, Spain did not leave the Philippines untouched linguistically. Spanish influenced Philippine languages deeply, especially vocabulary, religion, government, and names. But speaking Spanish fluently was never the normal experience of most Filipinos across the archipelago. For much of the colonial period, missionaries often worked through local languages to communicate with communities speaking Tagalog, Cebuano, Ilocano, Hiligaynon, and others. Spain eventually pushed formal education more aggressively. The Educational Decree of 1863 called for primary schools in towns, made primary instruction free, and required Spanish to be taught. But that reform came very late in a colonial period that had already lasted almost 3 centuries, and implementation was uneven. Now add another important piece. The Philippines was never a place with only one native language waiting to be replaced. It was, and still is, a highly multilingual archipelago. Communities separated by islands, mountains, trade routes, and local identities developed many distinct languages. That meant many Filipinos were accustomed to living around more than one language. Someone might speak one language at home and another for trade, school, or work. This helps explain why switching between languages feels so ordinary in Filipino life. But it does not prove that Filipinos inherited some biological gift for English. Cultural habits can be passed down. A special language gene cannot simply be assumed. The decisive turning point came in 1901. Under American colonial rule, Act No. 74 created a centralized Department of Public Instruction. The law was clear that English was to become the basis of public school instruction as soon as practical. This was not vague cultural influence. It was government policy. The new system needed teachers, so the colonial government brought hundreds of American educators to the islands, including about 600 remembered as the Thomasites. Suddenly, English was not just the language of foreign officials. It was entering classrooms across the country. That difference is crucial. A language becomes powerful when people have a reason to use it. Under the American school system, English was connected to textbooks, examinations, government work, professional advancement, and higher education. A Filipino child could encounter English simply by entering a classroom, learn it well, and it could open doors. Spain had introduced schools and Spanish instruction, but the American administration attached English to a centralized public education system designed to reach ordinary students across the archipelago. Now imagine what happens after one generation. Children learn English from teachers. Some later become teachers, professionals, or government employees. They use English in their professions. Their children then grow up seeing English not merely as a foreign language, but as something connected to education and opportunity. At that point, the language no longer depends entirely on the colonizer being present. The institution begins reproducing the language on its own. That is how a foreign language can survive political independence. And that is what happened after the Philippines became fully independent in 1946. Independence ended American sovereignty, but it did not erase the schools, universities, professional systems, books, and habits that had developed during the previous decades. English remained deeply embedded. Today, the 1987 Constitution recognizes Filipino and English as the official languages of the Philippines for communication and instruction, subject to provisions of law. English did not remain only because America once ruled the country. It remained because Filipinos continued to find practical uses for it. There was another reason English stayed useful. The Philippines needed languages that could connect people from different linguistic regions. Filipino, based largely on Tagalog, became the national language, while English also became an important bridge in education, government, business, and communication. A Cebuano speaker, an Ilocano speaker, and a Tagalog speaker could have different home languages yet encounter English through the same school system. This did not erase local languages. It created a layered environment where local languages, Filipino and English, could serve different purposes. Then, the modern economy gave English a second life. International business, overseas employment, technology, and especially the business process management industry turned English proficiency into an economic asset. In 2025, the Philippine IT and business process management sector was approaching 1.9 million jobs and about $40 billion in revenue. A large English-speaking workforce helped the Philippines compete in global customer service, healthcare support, finance operations, and other services. That reputation is visible in international assessments too. In the 2025 EF English Proficiency Index, the Philippines ranked 28th globally and was placed in the high proficiency category. The index is based on EF test takers, not a perfect sample of every citizen, but it still reflects the country's strong reputation for English ability. More importantly, Filipinos did not simply preserve American English. They adapted it, mixed it with local speech, and used it for distinctly Filipino purposes. Spanish did not completely disappear either. It survives in vocabulary, family names, place names, religious traditions, historical documents, and in Chavacano, a Spanish-based Creole language still spoken in parts of the Philippines. So this is not a story of English defeating Spanish. The two languages entered Philippine society through different systems. Spanish left a huge cultural imprint over centuries, but its spoken form never became universal. English arrived later, but it was attached to a nationwide public school system while modern Philippine institutions were being reorganized. This is why counting years of colonization can be misleading. 300 years of political control does not automatically produce 300 years of mass language education. What matters is how a language reaches ordinary households, what institutions reward its use, whether children encounter it regularly, and whether it remains useful after the rulers who introduced it are gone. Spain had more time. America had a powerful education system, a clear language policy, and a historical moment that allowed English to spread rapidly. The Philippines then kept the language because it continued to serve Filipino needs. So why do Filipinos speak English instead of Spanish? Not because Filipinos were born better at learning English. Not because Spanish left no mark. And not simply because America was the last colonial power. The deeper answer is that English was planted through mass education, reinforced by institutions, and later rewarded by the global economy. Spanish shaped much of Filipino culture. English became one of the tools Filipinos learned to use to navigate the modern world. A language introduced by colonial power did not remain frozen as a colonial possession. Filipinos made it their own. Now I want to know what you think. Did you grow up speaking English alongside Filipino or another Philippine language? And before watching this, did you ever wonder why Spanish never became the main language of the Philippines? Share your thoughts in the comments. If you enjoyed this story, please like the video and subscribe to the channel for more fascinating stories about the Philippines, history, culture, and the surprising reasons behind things we often take for granted. And when you are done, check out the other videos on the channel. There is a lot more Philippine history waiting to be uncovered.